The assessment for a delusional thought disorder is called a mental status exam of thought and perception. So I posted a little post today, referencing that, and you can Google mental status exam and NCBI return. It's to the National Institute of Health website, and there's a chapter from Martin on the mental status exam. And there's a bunch of them. There's a mental status exam for language and one for memory and attention and concentration. So there's all sorts of mental status exams for different brain function areas. This particular one, is called a mental status exam of thought and perception. It's a sweep of the frontal lobe executive function systems for linear logical reasoning. We're looking at the linear logical reasoning systems. We're going to do it in a very specific way. And then as we sweep the thinking system, we're going to be looking for symptoms like conceptual disorganization, that things don't kind of line up, and associational thinking, that instead of linear logical, it pops off and goes emotionally associational thinking around some things. And so the mental status exam of thought and perception doesn't look at what the content, what their belief system is. It looks at how they arrived at that belief system. Is there sufficient support for that belief? And it's looking at a specific element of the delusion, the thought disorder. And in assessing a delusion, we don't do it based on history or reporting. We actually pop it out in the session. And so we're looking at it's in the session, and we're looking at it and looking at the features, which is why we can rate it on something like the BPRS on degree of preoccupation or functional impairment, or do they have full conviction in the belief? Because we're actually looking at it in the session. And so when we do a mental status exam of thought and perception, we're looking at how the person arrives at their belief. A delusion starts with the conclusion as fixed and then constructs the evidence to match the fixed belief. And so that's what we're looking at. When we look at the evidence that's used to support it, and there's no there, because the belief is already fixed and they're constructing this. The rest of us, normal range thinking, follow the evidence to the conclusion. So we can see a linear path at how the person arrived at that. It may be wrong path, but at least there's a path by which they arrived at their beliefs. The other feature of a delusion is that when you present it with contrary evidence, it doesn't process the evidence. You see no impact of that contrary evidence on the thought process. It just sort of bounces off. It's denied or just disregarded. There's no impact from the contrary evidence. And whereas for a normal belief system, if you present contrary evidence, you at least see them processing it somehow. They come up with counter arguments or maybe change their beliefs to some degree. You see something happening. You don't see that happening with a delusion.